Welcome to our monthly professional development for dancers session. My name is Zoe Henro. I'm the artistic director of Ballet Co.Laboratory, and I have with me here today to talk about your future in dance and different career paths that they've taken. I have 5 other panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce them. We have Hope Hagen. You might recognize Hope. She did some costumes with us 2 years ago now. And Hope is now at the Newfield Museum and Garden as their institutional giving coordinator. We also have Rachel Seeholzer. Rachel is our school performance and outreach manager, as well as a company artist with Ballet Collaboratory. We have Rachel Kepp. Rachel Kepp is our managing director at Ballet Collaboratory. Anna Rohr. Anna Rohr is our school studio manager at Ballet Collaboratory. And then a new face to Ballet Collaboratory is Genevieve Waterbury, and she teaches at Ballet Collaboratory as well as does freelance choreography and dancing herself. So what we're going to do to begin here is we'll each share our path kind of from high school forward and why we chose to go the direction that we did. You have 6 pretty unique stories here. So hopefully that can help give some insight and some inspiration into maybe how you would like to pave your way in the arts industry. There's a chat to the right of your screen, and if you have any questions along the way, feel free to post in the chat, and then we will follow up with questions after everyone has shared a little bit about themselves. So we're going to start with Anna Rohr, who's going to talk a little bit about her experience after high school.
All right. So I went to Colorado State University, which is in Fort Collins, Colorado. It's about an hour from where I grew up. And I looked at a few other programs and kind of landed on that one just because I liked it the most. It's considerably cheaper to go to school in the state that you live in because tuition is a lot less. And so I decided I would go with that route and see how I felt after the first year. I was lucky enough to start at the same year as a dance professor named Carol Roderick, who had a huge impact on my career and my dancing life. She was a really excellent teacher and kind of made me fall in love with dancing in a way that I didn't know. I had originally hoped to maybe teach after college. I wasn't really set on the idea of dancing professionally, but I was open to it. And throughout my 4 years, not just learning technique and being in classes and rehearsals, but also seeing a different side of things like lighting design and stage management, and taking classes in each of those things gave me more of like a full circular view of what dance entails and how many different directions you can go with it, that it's not necessarily just dancing. I have always really loved to teach and spent a good amount of my 4 years at CSU in pedagogy classes discussing not just, syllabus work and how to progress someone through one, but how to teach, and ultimately really loved that aspect of it. I had originally planned to maybe pursue professional dance for a year and see how it went. I had some concerns with how it would impact me and my mental health, and I wasn't sure that it was really the best career option, but I was open to it because I still really love dancing. And I was lucky enough to start with St. Paul Ballet back in 2014, and started working with Zoe Henro there, and it was a really excellent environment for me for many reasons, but I think an important lesson I learned is it's great to make a plan and have an idea and listen to how you're feeling, but not be so stuck on it that you miss opportunities or you feel like that's the only thing that you can do, and it can't stray to something else, because as you grow up, things change and your view on things morphs a bit. So after those 4 years at St. Paul Ballet, I started with Ballet Collaboratory 2 seasons ago. So this is our third season that we're in right now. And I think more than anything, I've been so pleasantly surprised with not just how feasible it is to have a career in dance, but also how rewarding it is. And it's certainly difficult, but completely worth it. And I think you'll always get questions about, is it a good career path, or what are you ever going to do with that? And I think my answer from my perspective is a lot. And there are many different directions you can go in. It doesn't necessarily have to be one way or another, and it changes for everyone a bit. So that's, I think, in a nutshell, kind of my journey for the past 7 years now. And it's been an interesting one, but very rewarding.
Great. Thank you, Anna. So now we'll let Rachel speak a little bit about her journey. She's been many, many places around the United States. So it'll be interesting to hear a little bit from her. Rachel, your mute is on.
My cat was the only one who could hear me. Hi, everyone. So my journey was a little different. I chose to take the route of pursuing a career as soon as I could. I grew up in Los Angeles, and the dance studio I was at was sort of crumbling, to put it nicely. And halfway through senior year of high school, I told my parents, I was like, I want to dance and I want to go now, which you can imagine my parents weren't too happy about, but I still don't regret that decision. And so halfway through senior year, I moved to Chicago and I danced with Ballet Chicago. I danced in their studio company, and it was a very specific choice. They are a Balanchine school, and I had gone to their summer program, and I'd gone to P&B's summer program, and I knew, like, this is how I wanted to be trained. So I took that route at 17 years old, and I loved it. I knew I wanted to be a dancer early on. Like, the second I started dance, I was like, this is for me, which I know not everybody knows right away. And I'm very, very fortunate to know what I wanted early on. And I was with Ballet Chicago for about 2.5 years. And I sort of realized, I'm a part of a training program. It's essentially a traineeship, but it is not attached to a company. I needed to find something that was attached to a company, because that was, of course, my goal. So I branched out and I danced with, as a trainee with North Carolina Dance Theater about 3 years after that. And they are also primarily a Balanchine school, with Patricia McBride running the school at the time. And it really throws you into the lion's den, to put it nicely. You'd rehearse with the company, you dance, I think we dance like 8:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. some days. And for me, knowing that I wanted to dance, I needed to do that. I needed to throw myself into something like that, because I needed to know what the environment would be like. And it is very difficult, and it's a very real environment of what it's like to be a professional, and it really pushed you, both mentally and physically. So even then I was like, this is still what I want to do. And I, every year you meet with your, the artistic staff, and, they talk about your future, and you're very honest. They were, you're not meant for this place. I'm a 5'8" dancer, and they liked very short women. So I said, hey, that's great. They loved me. I love them. But they guided me to dance at Richmond Ballet as a trainee there. And that was probably what pushed me the most. That was a company environment that I, without harming their artistic staff, was not for me. It was not a happy environment for me. And it was one of those things where it's like, this is what I love. I want to do this. Why is it that this environment is pushing me away? So I decided to take a year off. from dance after that, and immediately was like, I can't live without this. And for someone who has gone through, putting myself in a professional company experience right away, those things do happen. And I knew that was a possibility. But then realizing, you know what, just because an environment wasn't for me doesn't mean that being a professional dancer isn't for me. So that was definitely a self-discovery on my year off. And then after that, I was very, very fortunate to get back to dance and join Charlottesville Ballet in Virginia as an apprentice, moved on to be a company member. And I think what helped me really not necessarily be successful in a professional company, but hold my own ground was putting myself at a young age in that position of being in that environment. And it sort of builds calluses, I think, sort of emotional calluses. And it really helped me become the person I am today. I feel like a lot of people are afraid to be in a professional company because they are afraid of, what is going to be put on them, what is going to be told to them. Is it going to beat them down? Are they going to be able to handle it? Anna talked about like the emotional aspect of it. Is it, how is it going to affect your mental health? And for me, it has made me really stand up against things that, that dancers are struggling with, and being a part of this, like, no, ballet needs to be a positive environment. And if I didn't go through those experiences, I wouldn't have had the opportunities I have now. And I've had an amazing opportunity to be in multiple companies now, and now with BCL. So it's definitely a route that is a difficult one to take. And there are many of us who have taken it and have loved it. And it's not for everyone, but it is definitely something that has attributed to who I am now.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. I'm sure we'll have some follow-up questions too. So next, we're going to hear a little bit from Hope. And Hope has taken a lot of different directions in her career already.
Hi, so my name is Hope. I currently work at Newfields in Indianapolis. I'm the institutional giving coordinator there. My journey has certainly been not linear. I'd say I did a lot of this. My senior year of high school, that is kind of when that's when I decided I wanted to really continue dancing, because when I first started looking at college programs, I didn't want to dance professionally, but I still wanted to continue dancing, at least recreationally, but still at a really high level. I just really didn't want to mess around with really like low level beginner classes. It didn't really sound enjoyable to me. So I was trying to find college dance programs that were really strong and had a really strong ballet foundation. And that's when I found Butler University, which is where I did my undergrad. And so I actually, when I first started at Butler, I was a dance pedagogy and secondary education major because I wanted to be a Spanish teacher. And then after about a week of that, it's like, I don't want to be a teacher. This is not for me. And that's when I discovered the arts administration degree path that Butler has. So their dance program has dance performance, dance pedagogy, and dance arts admin. And so I picked dance arts admin. It was really more at my dad's insistence, because he said, okay, you're either going to get a dance arts admin degree, or you can get your dance degree and a double major in business. And I said, no, thanks, I'll do arts admin. So having really no idea what that even meant, for some reason, it never really occurred to me that other people had to be like running things on the back end while the dancers performed and all of that. But Butler turned out to be a really great environment for me. It was a very conservatory style program, but you still got a great liberal arts education while you were there. And so when that first year, after honestly a week of being there, I was like, oh, okay, this is what I want to do. And so my plan the whole 4 years was to pursue a career in professional ballet. Unfortunately, my senior year, I had a really serious hip injury that kind of clipped that plan. But I had the summer before my senior year, I did my internship with the Minnesota Orchestra in their fundraising department on their development team. And that was a really positive experience. And so from that point, I was like, okay, I really like fundraising. I could definitely see myself doing this someday when I'm done dancing. And then the day when I was done dancing came a little sooner than I anticipated. So I graduated. I moved back home to Minneapolis, lived with my parents for 2 years. In those 2 years, I had hip surgery. I did an internship with the Minnesota Orchestra in their education department. That was in that kind of first year after I graduated. So I worked part-time with them. I also worked part-time at the Dakota Jazz Club and Restaurant downtown, which was pretty cool. I was just a host there. But then in the fall of 2018, that is when Zoe asked me to be the costumer for Ballet Co.Laboratory. And then about a month later, the orchestra reached back out to me and asked me to work full-time in their education department. And so then I became the education coordinator. And so I was kind of doing those two jobs simultaneously, it was very, very busy, but it was very rewarding. And so for the orchestra, I was kind of working with their OH Plus program, which is all the pre and post concert activities. And Ballet Co.Laboratory has performed with them a few times, which was really cool. But I got to costume Nutcracker in Wonderland, Gentle Human, and The Little Prince, which was a really incredible experience. And then in spring of 2019, that is when I applied to work at Newfields. And that was more because of some things that were happening at the orchestra with our department. Some people had left and the positions we had were temporary, and then they were doing a search. And I was like, okay, well, if you pick not the person who's there now, then I get to seek alternative employment. And I wasn't just going to sit around and wait to be unemployed in case that happened. So I started applying for jobs, and there wasn't a whole lot. I knew I wanted to go back into fundraising, and I was in education at that point. And there wasn't really anything in the Twin Cities that I was interested in or qualified for. A lot of the stuff I was seeing was like director of development, manager of individual giving. And at that point I was like, well, I have an internship's worth of experience. I just wouldn't even know what to do in those positions. So I applied to work at Newfields. So I applied in April, and about 2 weeks later I had the offer, which is abnormally fast for really any position. But it turned out the woman that hired me went to school with me. We were actually the same age, which was kind of funny. So then I moved out here in June, and I started as the corporate giving coordinator. And then our grant writer left to pursue another opportunity. And then I was kind of handling our grants and reporting for about a month and a half while we searched for a new grant writer. And so then once they brought her on board, our department head decided to change my title to institutional giving coordinator so that I could be available in a more official capacity to our grant writer. And so ever since then, I've been kind of doing both. I still focus primarily on corporate giving, but it's been a really rewarding experience just to kind of work in different arts organizations as well, because obviously I come from that dance background, and I worked at an orchestra for a little while. Now I work in an art museum and garden, which is super cool. So it's been definitely a wild ride, but I'm excited to see what happens next.
Great. Thanks, Hope. So very different stories already. We're going to let Genevieve share a little bit next. Interesting, not popular news is that Genevieve was one of my sister's friends growing up, and then she moved here. So it's fun to have her in the Twin Cities. And just unmute yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I grew up with Zoe at Boulder Ballet. And my high school transition into college experience was, at that point, I hadn't really considered dancing professionally as an actual option for myself. I am from a family of musicians, and so I kind of grew up with this environment of, we love the arts, we totally appreciate the arts, but nobody gets paid in the arts, was sort of this underlying tone. And so that was just not something I ever really considered as an option. But when I was looking for college options, I knew that I was still wanting to dance, even if I wasn't going to dance professionally or that wasn't going to be my sole degree. I, at that point, was just not ready to quit. So I applied to all like high-level ballet programs. I knew I really wanted to be a classical ballet dancer, and ended up going to CSU as well, where Anna went. It was in state, and so it was definitely the most affordable option. And because I knew a couple people that were already in the program there, I had an idea of what the training was like and that it was still very serious ballet, even if it was in state and I was ready to kind of move out of state. And within my first couple of probably even weeks, maybe months at CSU, my ballet professor told me that I could dance professionally. And I think that was the first time that I was ever told explicitly, actually, yeah, definitely, that I could be a professional dancer. And so all of a sudden it was like, this is an option. Like, there are people that do this. Why did I not even like know that that was possible? And so that just kind of set me off. And that was my freshman year. She told me, she was like, we've got a lot of training that we can still do. There's a lot of refinement. So I'm really grateful that I ended up there and was able to have that attention to detail and someone that was ready to prepare me for this professional world, as opposed to my previous training, which I didn't know that being a professional dancer was an option. And so I started applying for or auditioning for companies my sophomore year of college. And I think I sent my materials to like over 30 companies. I auditioned in person for 10 to 15. And I got one traineeship. And so I took it and I moved to Las Vegas and I danced for Nevada Ballet Theater. And that was definitely a moment of, there are a lot of really good dancers out there. And I think that I had so much to learn there, and it was not the most comfortable environment a lot of the time. They had a lot of turnover. Artistic director was, I mean, they're all like, maybe not all Zoe, but he was just very difficult to work with and had a very particular style. And I learned a lot, and I mostly think that I learned a lot about myself and a lot about my relationship with dance. And I got really good too, because I was surrounded by really good people, and I was like, dang, I gotta work hard. Okay, we're doing it. So I was there for 2 seasons and was pretty unhappy by the end of the second season with the relationship to trainees. We worked 48 hours a week, Monday through Saturday, and we were not paid. So the whole time I was there, I would work 10 to 6 and then drive to the Strip in Las Vegas. And I worked at a concert venue from 6:30 to midnight, sometimes 2 a.m. In order to pay rent. So it was sort of at the end of the 2 years, it was like, if I'm not going to get this promotion and actually get paid to dance, this is not working for me. And I didn't. So I ended up moving back home for a little while and was very mad at ballet. And yeah, and frustrated and just like, what do I do now? You know, I really went for it. I didn't do the double major. I decided that that was where I was going, and I fully devoted to it. And so I definitely had a moment or handful of panic when I got back to Colorado of like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It ended up being 4 or 5 months of really wonderful connection back to myself as a person. And ultimately in that time, similar to Rachel, I realized I can't actually live without dance, and I need it in my life in some capacity. even if it's not full time. I also started a relationship and like learned and fell in love, and that made me a better artist because I just had another like insight into all of these characters I portrayed on stage. It was all of a sudden like, oh, that's what it feels like to be longing for Romeo over there. Like, I know that feeling now. So I needed that break from my total ballet grind in order to grow as a person. And then I decided I was ready to get back into the dance world, and I moved to New York. And my boyfriend followed me later, so yay. And that's where I started my contemporary career. At that point, I still thought I really wanted to be a classical dancer. And New York was where I just started taking class and challenging myself with techniques that I hadn't done before. You get really used to being like the worst person in the room in those classes because you're like, I'm not a hip hop dancer, but I know I need to embrace something different. And so I took a lot of classes that were really uncomfortable, but also I grew so much as a dancer, and ended up having a nice 4-year freelancing career there. And I'm new to Minneapolis. Actually, not really new anymore, but because of COVID, it feels that way. And hoping to develop more of my contemporary or choreographic career. And I've been teaching a lot more now. But I think the main underlying theme of this is that my relationship to dance has continued to evolve and has changed in ways that were really uncomfortable and then also really rewarding. And I think that that was the most important lesson that I'm still learning, is that it really does ebb and flow. And like a relationship with anyone, with your parents or your friends, it's like you've got years where you're so synced up and it feels really good and you're inspired. And then years where there's just, it's out of sync and you're not quite feeling it. And so, yeah, be comfortable with the changing relationship.
Thanks. I know you as Evie, but I'm trying to call you Genevieve now. All right, so next we'll hear from Rachel Kepp. Many of you have seen her doing all of our administrative things, but she too has a lot of dance that brought her to what she does now. Make sure you unmute.
Thank you for that. Hey, everybody. Thanks for spending a little bit of your Sunday afternoon with us, planning your futures. Good for you. That's really exciting. My journey started same with everybody else, senior year. I had been dancing since I was 3, 6 days a week. Most of the people that I was dancing and training with were okay with giving that up after graduation and just kind of moving on to other things. And I was not. I wanted to carry dance with me throughout my life, but I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do that. I knew that life as a professional performer would not be a good career choice for me. I have an extreme type A personality. So as a performer, you have to be a little bit more flexible as far as where your next gig or your next company membership might be with. And I knew that that would be really stressful for me. So I was trying to brainstorm different ways to stay connected to the arts. And even when I graduated, I still wasn't quite sure how to do that. So I grew up here in Minnesota, and I chose to go to school in Moorhead, which is on the border of Minnesota and North Dakota. They had a really strong mass communications program and a dance performance program as well. So I could get a major in mass communications and I could get a minor in dance performance. I also looked at the University of Minnesota's dance program, but they are so extremely modern, and that wasn't really something that I quite enjoyed. So I chose Moorhead because it was a more of a sampling of all different types of dance. So there was definitely ballet training, jazz training, musical theater training. We did a little bit of tap. So it was just dabbling in a little bit that I had grown up with. So I did that. I was always told that I was a good writer. So that's why I chose mass communications versus business. Business, I was told that was a lot more numbers than math class, and that was something that I didn't necessarily excel at, but writing was. So that's how I made the choice between the two different administrative programs. About my junior year, I started looking for internships. So when I moved away for college, I taught dance, which is something that I always suggest to people who have a really strong dance foundation, because dance studios are also always looking for really talented teachers. And being able to teach dance while in school, it was a good way to make good money without having to work tons of hours. So that was a great thing for me, because I was doing the major, I was doing the minor, I was working, and then I was also on the university's dance team as well. So that was how I balanced all of that. But junior year, I started looking at internships, and I applied for one at an outdoor summer theater called Trollwood for the Performing Arts, which is in Fargo, North Dakota. And I really thought that I wanted to go into marketing. And so I applied for the marketing internship. I did the panel interviews. It was a pretty stressful interview process when I think back to it for an intern. And they said, you're more than welcome to take the marketing position. You're more than qualified for it, but we think that you would really excel in fundraising. And that's not something that everyone excels in. And I thought, oh my gosh, asking people for money, that sounds like the worst thing in the world. That didn't really excite me. But I went home and I thought about it, and I realized that for people that were in the profession for over 20 years, if they saw that in me, that was probably true, and maybe I should give it a try, because I was already doing a lot of marketing things within my school program. So I did that internship, and they were right. I was good at it. So I'm glad I followed that advice, because then I continued doing a good mix of fundraising and marketing internships through the rest of my schooling. So then I did some fundraising for one of the dance schools I was working for, which was also a nonprofit. I did some internship work with the university's theater department for some of their productions that they did. But then it was time to graduate and find a job. And I moved back here to the Twin Cities from where I am from, and found that it was much harder to find an arts admin job than I thought, because people in arts admin tend to really love their jobs and they stick with their jobs. So I had to take a job that maybe I wasn't so excited about at a mental health organization. And I worked there for 3 years while I waited for another position that seemed really exciting to me. And so I had the appropriate experience. So from there, I moved on to Children's Theater Company, and I worked there for 8 years. I started at the very bottom, entering donations into our computer system and printing thank you letters. And then just slowly through the years, started getting promoted as I started gaining more skills. Then I moved to the Cole Center for Dance and the Performing Arts. I worked there for 3 years. Again, started in a development capacity, and then moved to a manager capacity of the organization, and then came to Ballet Co.Laboratory. So that was my climb. I would say my advice is take the advice of people that see different things in you that you don't see in yourself, because this wasn't necessarily the path that I thought that I would be good at. And it's great when someone can point that out and you can make a real difference. So that's what I have to say about that.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. So I'll share my story. This is the last story share, and then we'll go into questions. So if some questions have been popping into your head, or specific people that you want to ask a question to, please use the chat. So I grew up in a household with 2 parents who went through grad school, getting their PhDs, moving to this country. So college was not an option. It was something I had to do. I fought for Rachel Seeholzer's path really hard and lost that battle. But in retrospect, I'm very grateful to my parents for being such a pain in my butt because I think I learned a lot about myself in college that I wouldn't have otherwise. I was always a good student. And I think a lot of dancers we know we have to be dedicated to make things happen. And so we dedicate ourselves to everything in our lives. And so when I was looking at schools, I really wanted that dance program, kind of like what Hope was saying. I didn't want to just do beginning ballet. I wanted to keep doing point work and learn things and challenge myself. So I went the liberal arts route because I knew my parents would not let me go to college and just be a dance major. That's their exact words, which I was very upset about. So they said I had to major in something other than dance. So I said, fine, I will double major. And the only place that would really allow me to do that is a liberal arts college. I did also look at CSU. I looked at University of Utah, but because those were more universities, it was very difficult to double major, especially with a science. And since I was going to college, I thought, well, maybe I'll prepare myself to become a physical therapist one day or something like that. I'd always loved anatomy and biology. And so I decided to go down that route for my double major. It was very challenging to balance all of my lab courses with my dance. So I ended up auditing a lot of the ballet classes and not taking credit. I just wanted to dance. And I also, my teachers at Mount Holyoke, where I ended up going for college, also had their own studio in town in Holyoke. And so I would go to their studio as well to supplement my classes so that I was getting enough classes. But definitely there were days where I would start with, my biology lecture at 8 a.m. and then I'd go to ballet class at 10, and then I would have another class at noon, and then I would have my lab until 4, and then I would go back to the studio and rehearse until 10. And that was just kind of my life, and I loved it. My weekends were all about rehearsal and doing homework. And I knew that I needed to get myself into internships if I wanted to have enough on my resume that after dancing, I could go back to school. I ended up actually becoming pre-med. I did the MCATs. I took an internship in Boston with a physical therapy clinic. And created a whole seminar series for dancers and for dancers' parents and for dance teachers in the Boston area. So really trying to help with knowledge of what dancers need physically, anatomically, emotionally. And that's where I started loving the behind the scenes of dance and of dance schools, of companies. I got to work with a lot of professional dancers from Jose Mateo and other little companies in Boston, and just was really curious about the way that their lives worked. I also did a marketing internship with Delusions of Grandeur, which was a small company in Boulder. So when I went home one summer, I just ended up working on their show the entire summer, and I loved the fast-paced environment of arts admin, and got more curious about that. Where my love of arts administration really solidified is in my junior year at Mount Holyoke. We put on a student concert every year. And for my junior and senior year, I ended up being the director of that student concert. And so I worked with all of the faculty and the crew. I had to be on crew to get my dance major too. So I had to do all the roles. I had to do light board, I had to do sound operator, ASM, everything. And I just loved it. I loved everything about it. But I knew I couldn't be everything. So I had a hard time with that. I had a hard time choosing. And then finally, when I graduated double major in dance and biology. I did my thesis on kind of unlearning. And my wife is a neuroscientist, so I was really inspired by everything she and hers, and that's kind of where my thesis project started. And when we graduated, she had an opportunity here to do her PhD in Minnesota, and I had a small gig with a company for a couple months here, so we moved here. And after that gig was over, I didn't know what to do. And so I actually worked in a lab for 2.5 years. I used my biology degree and I worked in a lab at the U, a microbiology lab. And thankfully my PI, my boss at the time, was really flexible with my hours. So I did the Fringe Festival. I created a Fringe show in 2013. And then I ended up hopping on the bandwagon at St. Paul Ballet. And the dancers needed a director. That's what the board told us. And I was the only one who had ever directed a show. And so I became the artistic director, and the rest is history as far as I'm concerned. But I love it. I love every single day of my job. Yes, there are ups and downs all the time. I love dancing. I think that dance can hold a really special place in everyone's heart, and it teaches us that passion and that dedication that you need to succeed really in any career. What I love to do with all of you as students at Ballet Co.Laboratory is teach you everything that you can do in this industry. Because there's a lot to do. There's a lot to learn, from work exchange students teaching, being at the front desk, to assisting teachers in classes and learning how to teach. Doing laboratory 2 and maybe doing your own piece like our seniors do, and understanding what lighting design is, what is costume design, how does it all come together. Those are really important. Even if all you ever want to do is be a dancer and you don't want to be in a behind the stage role, it's important and valuable to know everything that goes into getting you on stage, because there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a whole team behind you. So I think at Ballet Co.Laboratory, we do a really good job of all working together and making sure that everyone understands how much dedication has been put in by every single member of the staff in order to make even something as simple as an open rehearsal work, right? So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. I also have prepared some questions that I thought many of you might have. So I'm not seeing any questions. We're being shy today. We can't even see you. You can literally ask us questions without us even seeing you. So one question that I think would be good to ask, let's see. So I think something that would be good to maybe dive into a little bit more, especially right now with what's happening in the world and with us needing to be creative to keep the dance industry and the arts industry going. What are some things that people are thinking of to kind of set themselves up for the next chapter of their career, whether that be, within your dancing career, or thinking about, well, I would really like to get more into my teaching or something like that. I think that would be something that would be interesting to hear about. I might have to put someone on the spot. Anna, can I put you on the spot? Just unmute yourself.
Thanks. I think something for, I don't know, I would suggest to students now about preparing for your future, I guess, is to start with considering what you feel really passionate about and what's exciting to you. I'd also like to balance that with everything that you love and feel passionate about will sometimes feel like work, and that's part of life. So I would start with maybe focusing on the things that make you excited, but then looking at, I don't know, how many different directions you could go in with that one thing. I, for myself, personally think that giving yourself some backup options is smart, just because you never know what life will throw at you. I do think that there are so many different branches, even in one specific field, so it doesn't have to be that I'm only ever going to do this one thing and it's all I want and nothing will ever interest me beyond that. So I would look at what you want to do, and then following that, find the resources that will help you get there, whether it's school or a training program or an apprenticeship, and finding, you know, the people that will help develop you to get there.
I definitely agree with everything Anna said. I'm going to talk a little bit about life post-dance. As we all know, a dancer's days are kind of numbered. It's not always something that you can do professionally forever. Whether you make your own choice to stop dancing someday, or if an injury forces you to stop dancing, or some other unforeseen event forces you to stop. It's definitely a pretty big transition from dancer to, I don't want to say non-dancer, because once you're a dancer, you're always a dancer. That part of you never goes away. But having dance take less of an active role in your life. I think a lot of us, dancing is very entwined in our personal identity. It certainly was for me. I started dancing when I was 4. So I quite literally don't remember not dancing. It's one of my earliest memories. And so having to stop because of an injury was really heartbreaking, to be honest. I'm not going to say that it was, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to say it was easy, because it certainly wasn't. But whether you want to stay connected to ballet, or if you want to just completely distance yourself for it, that's kind of on an individual level. Personally, I chose to try and find things that would keep me connected to the art form. In my mind, I always loved dance. I loved ballet. It gave me so much in life, and I wanted to kind of give back to the art form. And so I did costuming for a little while, and that was super rewarding to be able to be really close to the artists as well, and really close to the productions. That helped me a lot, kind of transition from just a dancer to something else. But then being able, now working behind the scenes, now I work at an art museum and garden, not a dance company. But someday I would like to return to a dance company working in an administrative fashion. But there are plenty of other really fulfilling ways that you can continue to serve the art form, continue to participate in the art form, and all of that. So there's just try and stay open-minded about it and know that it doesn't ever truly go away.
Thanks, Hope. We have a question from the chat about double majoring. I did a lot of my research before going to college specifically about that. I wanted to dance at a high level, but I also wanted to double major. And that was actually really challenging for me to find spaces to do that. I ended up mostly applying to liberal arts colleges, many of which were women's colleges. It just happened that way. So if you're looking at double majoring, especially with dance and something else, you need a lot of hours to make your dance major what you want it to be, especially if you're an advanced student in our school and you want to stay at that type of level and that type of rigor. I would suggest find a liberal arts college where you can determine your schedule. So a lot of times at more university environments, it's kind of, you're given like, this is what you have to do this semester, this is what you have to do. It's a little bit more constructed versus liberal arts. You have to do all these classes within your 8 semesters. You choose how you want to put them together. And that allowed me a lot of flexibility in the way that I did my majors. I also, just overloaded my credits every semester because dance classes for me weren't like mental work. It was something I wanted to do because I wanted to be there. And then if you can also find a program that has a local dance studio nearby, then you have a lot of opportunities too. I had a friend who went to Smith. She double majored in chemistry and dance. She's at Festival Ballet Providence now. but she did Nutcracker every year with the local studio. So there are just some things to think about. I want to ask Managing Director about the opportunities that students at BCL have with us to learn a little bit more about arts administration.
Yeah, so I just want to piggyback a little bit about what Hope said. It's always good to have a plan B and a plan C. When I worked at the Cool Center for Dance, which is on Hennepin Avenue, I would hold open office hours once a month where professional dancers could come and ask me for advice on the arts admin side. And for a lot of them, it was, I've been training and dancing and performing my whole life. I'm getting to an age where I need to start phasing out the professional piece and more dance just for myself. Now what do I do? And it was really difficult to have to tell them that you're probably going to have to do an unpaid internship as a grown adult to start growing some other skills. And so I think that's what's so special about Ballet Co.Laboratory and the work that we do with our company members and our apprentice members. They all have an admin role, and we explore with them what they are interested in on the arts admin side. So, maybe that's more of the school piece. It could be outreach. It could be taking care of the company with this company manager role. It could be marketing. So if you are going to go into a path of performance, start thinking about maybe what that secondary piece that you'd like to train in. So if you don't know what that is, you can always explore that with us. I know that some of our work exchange students do things you can learn a lot even by checking in and registering students for classes, helping me pull a mailing list so we can mail a postcard so we can have people at our performances. Figuring out a really great fundraising campaign so we have money to run the organization. So there's a lot of different things that you could dabble in to kind of see what you enjoy, because that's what those little work exchange and internships are for. Sometimes people do it and they're like, oh my gosh, I absolutely love this. And sometimes people do it and they're like, I hate this and I thought that I loved this. So it's really an important tool to explore those pieces as you're trying to make that decision.
Thanks, Rachel. So before we have another question in the chat, but there was a question that a student has asked one of us in the past that we wanted to bring up, especially concerning that we're Ballet Collaboratory, right? We train you in ballet primarily. And it can be scary to say, I'm going to go for it in ballet. So Rachel's going to talk a little bit about that.
So we all know ballet can be overwhelming, and especially in a ballet company, the biggest fear that I hear, especially from women, is I don't feel like my body is celebrated. Am I too big? Are my feet not good enough? Is my skin too dark? And my advice is that it takes time to find a place for you. Ballet Collaboratory is actually my 5th ballet company that I have joined. They're the 7th professional company that I have joined, and I'm no spring chicken anymore, but it takes time, and that's okay. You have to first know yourself and love yourself, and some days, you don't always look in the mirror and say, you look great, but to know yourself and to know that it is a process to find a place, and there is a place for everybody. I'm a 5'8", woman of color, and I found a place for myself. And you don't let that fear stop you. We all have that gut feeling of, this is what I want to do, but I have all these fears. And, those fears are real. There's a reason why we have those fears, but just know that there is a process, and it is going to take time for you to find a place that loves you as much as you love it. And never ever feel like you don't belong in dance, or you don't belong in ballet, because like everyone on the panel has said, there has been a moment in time where it just clicked, like this is for me, or this is what I love to do, or this is my calling. And I never ever love hearing when students are like, I just don't feel like it's for me. And it's like, it is for you. This dance is for everybody. And it takes time to find a place that is for you, but there's definitely a place for everybody, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And it took a lot of us some time, right? I mean, everyone, regardless of it, if it was finding a dance company or finding an administrative position or finding a place to choreograph, or, you know, it takes time to find that place, but take risks. You know, do the little projects, because they build on top of each other. And last month we talked about doing our resumes and how to write resumes and things like that. And if your resume has 2 things on it, well, that's your experience. And the person next to you might have 13 things on their resume, right? So it's just about taking those small experiences and then learning from each of them. We have another question about what are dance opportunities for the future that could involve more than one style of dance? What would they like? What would they be like? Would they be post-college? Genevieve's going to talk a little bit about that, since she's kind of in that stage of, she did ballet, and then she started to develop different forms of dancing.
Yeah. I am actually going to start by just following up with some stuff that was talked about earlier, because I am a dancer that didn't really have plan B or plan C. I was very much uncertain about plan A even. And the reason I say that is because I always had other jobs in addition to supporting my dancing career, specifically in the service industry. And I am so grateful for those jobs and for that experience, and mostly for the people that I met doing that. So I would say that that is something that I entirely recommend, and it definitely is something that is not given a lot of credit, because it really teaches you how to interact with people that are not artists and are not dancers, and then you have an easier way of engaging with those people and bringing them into the dance world, as well as connecting with people when you are on stage who are not artists. So I think that establishing those relationships is really important. And for me, the service industry fueled my dance career, because I would not have been able to take all of the classes I was taking in New York, to do most of the projects, if I wasn't also making good money working in the service industry. But onto the different styles of dance, I would say that I had a couple of teachers, both at the ballet company I worked at and in college, who always encouraged me to do more contemporary movement. And I was not about it at all. Like, I would opt out of modern dance classes growing up, which I don't even know why that was allowed. But I knew I wanted to be a ballet dancer, even though other people were telling me that I could be a contemporary dancer and that that might be a good style for me. And it took being really uncomfortable in New York and not having a job and not having a dance job to get me to take other classes and to try other styles. And through that, my ballet technique grew so much, because I was able to finally understand depth and plie and all of these things that contemporary dancers are so good at, being grounded. And then I was able to find that in my ballet technique and grow out of that. The other thing I would say is that from my service industry jobs, I also met a lot of other types of performers, people who were musicians and vocalists, and we were able to collaborate. So there's a lot of opportunity for crossover when you step outside of your immediate artistic community. And yeah, I think that's where I'll wrap that up.
Wonderful, thanks. So what we're gonna do to close here, which first of all, this conversation's never closed, right? Many of us you see every week, never feel like you can't ask us a question. You know, you're looking at colleges or you're looking at traineeships and you want our advice. We probably know someone who's gone there, so ask us. But we're just going to close each with giving a little tidbit of personal advice. I'll go ahead and pull up our panelists in the order that they gave their stories. This isn't my advice to me today, but it is my advice to me when I was 18, is say yes. Even if it's something that you don't know anything about, if it's an opportunity to learn, say yes, see what happens. I said yes to being an artistic director of a group that I knew nothing about, and this is where I am 8 years later. So I'll bring Anna on next.
I think the best advice I could give somebody embarking on, I don't know, the post-high school decisions is don't get stuck on option A or option B and feel like there's potentially a wrong decision. I think everything has value. There's always something excellent that you can take from it. And don't get stuck on, I made the wrong decision and I'm in a place that I don't like. You're always able to change your mind. Everything is going to require work and time and effort, but listen to yourself. And if you're unhappy somewhere, change it. And don't get stuck on, I made the wrong decision and I can never get this time back and everything is ruined.
I'm just going to feed off of what Zoe already said, is that like this discussion never ends. You should always ask questions. And I know that sometimes you're like, I don't want to bug my teacher about this and that. And quite honestly, we love questions, especially if it's a question that challenges us. And if it's something we don't know, we are always more than happy to ask, you know, the next professional who we know is going to know the answer to your question. But, you know, never feel afraid, never be afraid of your teachers. Make sure you're always asking questions on the way, because, you know, that's what we're here for.
Definitely echo everything that was already said. I would say definitely remember it's not a race. You will end up where you're meant to end up sooner or later. I think like right now I feel really good about where I am, and it took me 2 years of just going all over the place to really figure that out. And so some of your peers might find that faster, and that's okay. You know, you want to make sure that you really find a place that you love and feel secure, and just try and meet as many people as you can along the way, and find people that are going to be in your corner for you and people that want to see you succeed.
I would say to be constantly building your resume. As a college student, just putting on your resume that you graduated from a really great program, right now that's usually not enough. You need to show that you've put in some time and have gained some experience along the way. So be looking for those opportunities. And then also don't be afraid to dabble in different dance styles. Even if you are in the dance program, there's usually around university, there's a lot of dance schools where you can take just a drop-in class, or different dance clubs where you can just go and try some different styles. I think that is a really great thing and a really great time in your life to try.
Yeah, and piggybacking on that, especially right now where there's so many virtual classes available, I've taken some of the hardest hip hop classes ever and just had my video on blank screen or whatever, hid my video because I'm like, this is something I need to work on, but I'm not comfortable being in the studio and showing people how bad I am at hip hop. So especially right now, I would definitely do that. And I would say, as cliche as it is, I became the artist that I am because of injuries and learning how to get over them and learning how my body needed to address the habits that I had been working into my technique so much. And through the roles that I did not get, or the roles that I thought were an insult or a slap in the face or whatever, you know, those are the moments where I actually learned what kind of an artist I am and what I wanted to do, and how I could further grow into my genuine artistry as opposed to somebody else's.
Well, I want to thank all of these wonderful women here for just spending an hour. Thank you for those of you who tuned in. This will be recorded, so if you want to go back and listen to someone's story again, if you want to share it with your parents, if you want to share it with another student, go for it. And these are 6 people. We have vastly different stories. Talk to more people about this. People to talk about, when I was 18, this is what I did. So ask people, especially in the company, ask people what their journey has been, and it will help you. Okay, until we have this conversation again, otherwise have a fabulous Sunday, and hopefully we will see you all really soon.